Item 10C, adopt a resolution approving the installation of red curb striping within the area bound by Tanforan Avenue, Herman Street, Huntington Avenue, and I-380 to provide access for emergency services near the Lunardi's Market driveway on Glenview Drive to provide access for a PG&E gas regulation isolation valve and in front of 1070 San Mateo Avenue.
Item in front of you is in regards to the installation of red curbs requested by Bruno Fire Department, PG&E, and FedEx, which has already been brought to the Traffic Safety and Parking Committee for their consideration. As a city policy that staff and TSPC address the red curbs request and bring them to City Council for approval. The red curb locations were evaluated to determine whether it would improve access for public safety and other agencies and impact of parking reduction in the neighborhood. Residents and business were notified of the red curbs and invited to attend the TSPC meeting to discuss their concerns. The only area which residents expressed concerns was for the red curb installation requested by the fire department. It's a little bit hard to see here, but this is the area which the fire department requested staff to evaluate. It's within the area bounded by Tanforan Avenue, Herman, Huntington, I-380 as shown on the slide. The slide kind of shows the entire neighborhood. It's a little bit small, but you can make out the majority of the red curbs that are being proposed at the corners. The fire staff expressed their concerns regarding the ability to access the neighborhood using their emergency fire vehicles. Although access was still an issue in the past, there were fewer cars impacting the street corners. The streets in the neighborhood are narrow with tight intersections and are generally unable to accommodate the turning radius and size of the fire engines and ladder trucks operated by the fire department. If cars are parked at the corners of the intersections, it's more difficult to turn into the street. Personnel from the fire department have previously experienced the need to stop their emergency vehicles and knock on doors to request residents to move their parked cars in order to provide emergency response. There have been several recent incidents where fire apparatus and ambulance access have been seriously delayed due to the inability to negotiate turns. Here's some pictures showing the fire trucks trying to maneuver into the intersections. There's one right there with the a town car that's parked there. There's another one here as well. So the red curb locations shown on these were identified during the site visit with both fire and public services department staff, and the fire department used their engine, as you can see here, to drive the roadways and determine the amount of red curbs needed at the intersections to allow them to turn into the streets. The installation of the red curbs would remove about 20 parking spaces within the neighborhood. And this item was discussed with the residents during the TSPC meeting on February 3rd, 2016. And residents were concerned that the addition of red curbs will remove more parking spaces in the neighborhood where there is already limited spaces. TSPC understood residents' concern, but the impact to public safety during emergency fire response is much greater if the fire staff can't access the roadway. The residents also inquired whether the open space on Bayshore Circle can be converted to parking spaces for the neighborhood. The city recently completed the first step, which is the phase 1 environmental assessment of the parcel, and found the area to be free of any contaminants. Since the parcel was not owned by the city and its future use hasn't been determined, future meetings will need to take place for further discussions about acquiring the property and discuss the possible use. TSPC has recommended to install the red curbs as requested by the fire department. The other red curb location was requested by PG&E. It's located next to the Lunardi's Market driveway on Glenview Drive. There's an existing isolation valve, as you can see, it's indicated in yellow, for a gas transmission pipeline that's located within the vicinity of Glenview Drive and San Bruno Avenue. The installation of the red curb would allow PG&E crews to have full access of this valve. Without the red curb, PG&E is unable to access the valve during an emergency if the vehicle is parked over it. Staff recommended TSPC to install 10 feet of red curb for this location, and the red curbs will not remove any parking spaces in this area, as there are approximately 90 feet of unrestricted parking at the proposed location. And TSPC concurs with staff recommendation to install the red curb to ensure PG&E crews have continued access to the isolation valve. And the final red curb location is for FedEx, which is located at 1070 San Mateo Avenue. The red curb striping was installed by the developer without prior approval from the city or South San Francisco Fire Marshal during the development project in 2014. South San Francisco Fire Marshal requested the developer to install 18 feet of red curb in front of the fire department connection for South San Francisco Fire Department access. However, the company's representative requested the contractor to paint 48 feet of red curb instead. So furthermore, there's an additional 30 feet of red curb on the north side of the FedEx driveway that has been painted red since 2011 without the city of San Bruno's approval as well. Staff has recommended to TSPs to remove approximately 23 feet of existing red curb to the south and the north here, and of this FedEx driveway. The removal of the unapproved red curb striping will result in 2 additional parking spaces. TSPC concurs with staff recommendation for removal of the portion of the unapproved red curbs. This concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff at this time? Ken?
Did staff instigate this study to look at all the red curbing, to see if it is in compliance, or was this just out of the TSPC's parking study? Because I think it's valid. I think there's a lot more that needs to be done in that neighborhood, and I know there's residents that have concerns about parking, and safety is a big issue, as far as circulation of the fire engines. There's so much over parking in there, and it started about a year ago where the staff did a study, and I think the residents and the businesses were feeling better knowing that there was going to be some attention to it. But it's going so slow, and there's complaints all the time about illegal parking, about blocking of driveways, about auto repair businesses that are just storing their cars on the street. I mean, yes, there's a parking problem, but there is a lot of violations, and I'm just hoping that the TSPC will go further in making some parking recommendations here. My other comment is, I saw the date on that photo for the Lenardis. Why does that something have to wait that long? If it's something that needs to be accessed by PG&E, and isn't there something that that staff can possibly just approve that, go ahead, without having to go through the process of recommendation from the TSPC and then a staff report coming to us, and then, lo and behold, it's 9 months later, and we've got it cleared. So that's the least of my worries. We got to hit San Mateo Avenue, and I know this lady probably has some other concerns she wants to express.
In regards to your concern about the neighborhood parking, the request did come from the fire department, so the staff looked into the issues and worked together with the fire department in regards to the access to the streets. And we recently did meet with the neighbors in that location, as well as the businesses with the TSPC to discuss the results of the parking study, which this is earlier this month, and not too many people showed up for the meeting with TSPC. I would say that about maybe 20 or 25 people showed up, and there was a mix of people that either wanted no parking restrictions because due to the they don't want to pay for the number of parking permits, and or haven't restricted parking permits that are available for them to purchase. And there's some people that are concerned about not having to be able to park anywhere they want, and there's especially the auto dealerships, because they have very limited parking spaces, for their business as well. So we discussed what what would be the appropriate solution for that neighborhood, as well as along Herman and Montgomery. And we do have some ideas that we want to share with a subcommittee that if we were to put together, and we have some of the results that from the TSBC meeting that we would that we can take back to you.
I'm not going to drag this out. I'd like to know when that's happening. I made a request almost 2 years ago to further the study, and I know people that live in, work in that area who are not getting noticed, or for some reason not voicing their opinion. So I'd like to know about it. I can tell by speaking to them what the problems are there. I mean, there's more than 50% of those cars that are not occupied. Those are cars that businesses are parking on the street, and they don't move. And the businesses can tell you that, but our enforcement doesn't go through and chalk, for 72 hours all the time. So I think it needs some limited parking time-wise, maybe even 6 hours, so that it does turn over, because it's not. So, but I'd like to know, when that's happening, so I can at least alert the people that have been complaining to me, what's going on.
So I think the director was referring not only to the Traffic Safety and Parking Committee, but as well the City Council's Subcommittee on Surface Infrastructure, and that would be you and your colleague. And so we look forward to being able to pull that information together and schedule a meeting with your subcommittee to talk about this, as well as plans for the 2016 pavement surface resurfacing program.
Anyone else?
Through the chair.
Yeah, Marty?
I'd like to echo that. This last campaign, there's parking problems in many areas. All the avenues up over by Sunset Drive, Elm, it's just more and more cars, and they're not moving quick enough. Unfortunately, with the it's public safety. Fire truck has to be able to get around there. And in the past, when we were doing work in that neighborhood, it's kind of like, wow, I hope there's not an emergency now, because nobody's going to get through. So I understand we have to do that. I would like to, first, I believe Bart owns that piece of property. Maybe you can correct me on that, and let's reach out to them and figure out how, the first phase is done. I guess we paid for it, even though it's their property, which is okay. But how are we going to move on to that? But we need to take charge of, or take control of the parking situations in San Bruno. It's getting worse and worse.
Okay. Anyone else?
You know what? I'll wait.
Would you like to address the council?
Waiting very patiently. I'll speak after.
Esperanza Torres, Buena Vista. I'm with Buena Vista. I live right there between the A and the V. See, it's already red on where the A is. It's already red, and the proposed red is where the V is, and then to the side. So I'm at the corner right there. So we're getting 2 red zones proposed, and I want to just say safety first. I know I want the fire trucks and the ambulances to go by. So that's I realize that, and I was there. I was at the house when they did when they painted the street, when the engine went by, and to see what red they were gonna what they were gonna suggest. So I saw them making the turns. So what I went to the street, the parking meetings and everything, and I said, and this is my last ditch, whatever. And so what I'm saying is, so when you get to you're on Diamond, and then you hit Buena Vista. So I saw the fire truck. They did the lines based on cars parked. So the engine, when he turned to the right, there was a car parked, and he marked it. And then, so the street in front of the car, the street, the neighbor in the front is going to get a red zone. So, but when he went to the left, there was a blue car in the front that never moves. It's one of those that we talked about that never moves. And so when the engine turned to the left, right in front of our house, where the V is at, where the V is at, when it turned there was no car, because that parking space, everybody uses it. It's one of those everybody, all the neighbors use it. But where the blue car is in the front, he never moves it, only when it's street parking. So when the engine made that turn, they marked with the right stripe. They marked to make our side red, but was so when I'm so when they turned to the left, they marked across the street. So had that blue car not been there, maybe they would have marked that red also and left ours where everybody uses it. They would have left that a regular color open. So I'm suggesting if the across the street where they can make that red, the engine still can make the turn to both sides. So that's all I'm suggesting, and it's and also like it's the 10 or 20 feet that it's taking, and like we're talking about a problem, area already, that it's already hard parking. Maybe you guys could take, like, it doesn't have to be 10 or 20, it could be maybe 8 or 17, feet. It doesn't have to be 10 or 20, maybe, it's just to add that little more foot, so that's all.
Thank you.
So,
Thank
thank you.
Rico?
Thank you. So the parking is, and thank you for going to all those meetings, and thank you for your comments tonight. I appreciate hearing it firsthand. This is an ongoing problem, and I'm understanding from staff that the fire department brought this forward, and that's what precipitated this. So I don't know if there's something that recently happened, or this year or late last year, that brought this, because obviously this has been an ongoing problem. I actually, a while ago, witnessed one of the engines actually making the turns. And I can tell you it is tight, and I can tell you it is difficult. And obviously, if there was a fire as to where we needed to get services there quickly and effectively, they would be hampered, which is very concerning. As far as Bayshore Circle, Vice Mayor Medina brought up, that is something that actually staff has looked in, has done some homework. Doesn't mean we can't circle back around. And my colleague Irene also echoed that as far as trying to do something. I went back in notes, and in 2011, I know I met with the city manager and brought that topic up. So I've got you beat as far as 2 years ago, but maybe we can readdress that topic again, because obviously it's a lot of land that is there that sometimes has vegetation issues, has dumping issues. In Bayshore Circle, the vehicles park on the sidewalks because they're afraid to get sideswiped. And thank God they do, because then you couldn't get an engine down probably, or the truck. So, I think we need to address it. The blue car that you brought up as an example. I would probably tell you the police would say, go ahead and make a call. Yes, it's 72 hours, and I know you folks are probably diligent, but don't give up. And then, so I am kind of curious what precipitated it now. And then also to the city manager, again, I'm going to bring up Bayshore Circle and seeing if we can't pull of all of our resources and consensus up here and see if we can do something.
Chief?
It's always, as you have all attested, it's always been an issue. Periodically, when we respond to emergencies, sometimes the engine company will come back and say, report that we went, there wasn't enough room. We had to, do whatever we did to either go around the other way. So, however, last year, if you guys recall, our truck went down, was out of service, and we borrowed Belmont's truck, and we were actually doing a test drive for it to see if it would possibly be something because we were possibly going to get a good deal on it. It's a little longer than our current truck, so that prompted us to drive many parts of the city to see if all the areas were accessible. So a lot of these areas that they drove the truck in were not accessible. Some of the grades in the San Bruno streets were not accessible. So they found out that the truck that we were going to get at Belmont was too big, and they also exposed a lot of the areas that are in this area here on the map, along with other areas in San Bruno that were not accessible for the truck. I mean, we got our truck back, and they continue to look at different areas, and this prompted the engine companies as well as the truck captains to go out and go into the streets and see what were the problem areas, because, as I said, they come up periodically. So they actually went out and looked at a bunch of areas after we were driving the streets, and it exposed a lot of areas within San Bruno that were inaccessible. So that prompted us to go to Jimmy's department and work with them to see if we could come up with some solutions. And what it was is they worked with staff to go out there and actually bring the truck and the engine out to certain areas. In regards to the left-hand turn versus the right-hand turn, I don't know if you know when the truck makes a left-hand turn, it has to swing really wide. Sometimes the left, I think what you're talking about is the left side there. We don't really need that area there where the truck has to swing really wide and maybe take out that parking spot. But that's an area we could still look at to see if there's a possibility that it could be changed to the other side. So that's what prompted this is like I said, they come up periodically, but it was time to go out into the community and see what areas were issues and for us to address it.
All right. Thank you, Chief.
And just to follow up, not to the chief, but to staff, if this does go forward, I hope that we very much communicate exceptionally well in the neighborhood, because where there may not been a lot of folks at the traffic safety, once the red zones are there, I think the questions will be asked. And I would hope that it also is accompanied not just by an FYI, but as to the rationale, to the safety concerns, and to the well-being of the neighborhood. So I really would like to have it clearly defined, explained, the process and the opportunities that the community's had, and that we still encourage them to voice their concerns and or give suggestions.
Thank you. Nothing else? Any action by the council on this item? Item 10C.
I'll introduce the resolution.
Councilmember Ibera.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
I'm saying aye with the caveat that staff relook at the blue vehicle and swapping out some of that space. And shoot, I just totally forgot the other piece. But at least that part. No. And I'm sorry, I know this is against protocol, but I wanted to ask, as we look at this, and we've talked about this in the past, is there any thought given to doing one-way streets down there? I don't know if that would alleviate any problems, but at least it might force just traveling.
They're basically one-way streets already. The width
Yes,
is,
but
yeah.
now it might be something to look at for more. Anyway, okay. That's a aye.
Okay.
My eye also will be along with what Councilmember O'Connell said about relooking at the area you questioned, as well as the outreach to the community.
Just to be clear, is the maker of the motion comfortable with the motion
In concurrence.
clarifying that the staff is directed as part of your vote to relook at the specific location raised by the resident?
Understood. Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving right along. Vice Mayor Marty Medina.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye.
It's very congenial.
All right.